Good evening, everyone. I hope everyone's doing well. I'm Adam with TAT Express, and if this is your first time tuning in with me, I am a certified ASC certified diesel technician. I've been servicing the DFW Dallas-Fort Worth area since 2008. I'm here to share you some tips on how to diagnose your semi truck. I am owner of a diesel shop in Dallas, so if you're looking for service, you can give us a call at 972-225-3017. We're located at 4140 Langdon Road, Dallas, Texas 75241. Thank you, everyone, for joining us this evening. I'm going to be talking about diagnostic tips. I'm going to go over just a few things. I'm going to be talking about what to use to actually look up your codes, OBD2 scanning or onboard diagnostics. We're going to be talking about visual inspections, what to look for. We're also going to be talking about fluid analysis, compression tests, exhaust gas analysis. We're just kind of looking at, we're analyzing your exhaust. We're going to be talking about that. We're going to be talking about electrical system testing, brake system inspection, air system inspection, sensor testing, and data logging. So this live is going to be packed with a bunch of information. So if you're a technician or a owner of a truck, this information is going to be packed. Later on at the end of the show, I'm going to be asking or answering questions. So if you have any questions to ask, be sure to hit me up on chat. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. Appreciate everyone that's out here pushing it. You know, we got to keep America rolling. America's not going to stop. Definitely we are the ones going to be building America back up. Hasn't really went down too much. Let me know where everybody's watching from. If you want to hit us up in the super chat, highlight your comments, be sure to hit me up in super chat. We're going to be talking about diagnosing tips. Okay, so if you guys, and later on I'll actually go over some of the shorts. We'll discuss some of the shorts that I shared today. All right, so the first topic we're going to be talking about, the first thing I want to cover is using OBD2 scanners or your onboard diagnostic to retrieve fault codes and identify your issues in the engine, transmission, or other systems. Now, getting a code description is very, very crucial, okay? There's a check engine light that comes on is going to cover a broad things of items. It's going to could cover transmission, it can cover differentials. So it's really important. It would be differential temperature. Well, what I wanted to mention is be sure to try to get the description, or if you can get a code number. Now, it's really useful to look up these codes. There's a lot of information online. You can Google it or ChatGPT it and look it up. Get the description on what it's going on so you can get a better understanding of what you're dealing with. Now, if you are a owner of a truck or a driver and it's a code that you may not understand, I would definitely get it to a shop and not try to fix it yourself or swap out sensors. Because, for example, if you get a code for a sensor and it's telling you, hey, something's out of range or low voltage on a sensor. Now, what you would need to do is troubleshoot that correctly and ensure that the sensor is getting all the correct voltages and also the return to ensure that voltage is going to that sensor. A lot of these sensors are very low voltage. We're talking about 5 volts, and the harnesses, I don't know if you guys seen these engine harnesses and sensor harnesses, ATS harnesses. They run all over the place, and they're going over hot items. They're exposed to the weather. So over a long period of time, those wires and those data links can get brittle, and you can lose that 5 volts very easily by it's either chafing or just from the heat, the extreme heat. If it's on the ATS system or around the exhaust area or anywhere on the engine, it's going to get hot. So those wires can get brittle over time, and when they get brittle, you're going to end up losing signals. It could either be a signal going to the sensor, the 5 volt that you're losing going to the signal or to the sensor, or that return signal coming back. So getting the description of the code is very important. It's going to actually describe to you what's going on. If the sensor is reading correctly, but something's out of range, then yeah, we need to be looking at what's going on with that. But if it's an open circuit, low voltage, something like that, definitely going to have to be troubleshooting to ensure that that media going to that sensor or that sensor is good, because a lot of times these sensors can go bad. There's tons of sensors. A lot of these trucks have so many sensors you'll lose count of them, and all these trucks are ran by electronic control systems. That's what the ECM is, and it's reading all these sensors in real time very quickly. So if you're getting bad readings somewhere, then it's definitely going to give you a fault code. A lot of the fault codes have counts. So if you have high counts, which means a fault code happens multiple times, then that's definitely something that you need to look at. Now, sometimes you can have a fault that's erratic, where it's hard to duplicate once we get it into a shop or once you're trying to diagnose it. Sometimes these faults can come up during operation, when the truck is under a load, when the truck is actually going up a hill or in a certain condition. And that's whenever it gets a little bit tricky to try to find what the problem is. Diagnosing is not an easy job. Okay, we do a lot of diagnosing at our shop. So if you guys are looking for a shop, a reputable shop that can get you taken care of, definitely give us a shout. 972-225-3017. Now, also, we got a lot of automatics coming out. Okay, there's a lot of automatic transmissions. A lot of the companies are adopting automated systems so that they actually take the driver out of the mix, because if they don't have someone or a clutch and they're not having to push the clutch very often. I had a comment the other day on chat that asked about double clutching. Now that's just going to wear that clutch out a little bit more because you're applying the clutch more. So a lot of these transmissions are being automated. They're easier to find drivers, easier to put a driver in, and some of them are burning less fuel. I know that the transmissions have evolved. The automated transmissions have evolved a lot. Back in the day, I remember when Eaton was just first coming out with their automated system, and it was a mess. You couldn't back up trailers. It would jerk really hard. So that's definitely something you want to take a look at. With these new automated systems, what I do like about them is the modern systems have so many different ways to test the system. So if you have a check engine light and it's throwing something with the transmission, it's definitely important to make sure that you're getting that looked at, and because you can use the computer, which is later on I'm going to be talking about the different testings that you can do without having to take anything off. And the system, your truck is the ECM is going to be monitoring a lot of different sensors. I know that PACCAR kind of combined their ECM and ACM, which is two different computers. You have one computer that's reading the actual engine, and then you have an ACM, which is your after treatment control module, which is another computer that's communicating with your ECM. And they're also communicating with your truck, which is a CPC. So you have actually three onboard computers that are working simultaneously, working with each other in real time, monitoring all these sensors, actually monitoring all the input as well from the throttle and everything that you're doing in the truck, so that this truck can operate correctly. So reading the codes is very important. A lot of these newer trucks, you're able to pull the codes, and what I've noticed as well is even the e-logs are able to give you a code description. So those codes are very important. You can either look them up online, or I remember we used to call Volvo. Volvo's got a hotline that you can call, and that hotline is going to allow you to call in and ask questions. They're not going to help you troubleshoot it. They're just going to give you a more clear description on what the code is. Now, OBD2 scanners, what they are is they're going to connect to your OBD port, which is going to be on the left side. If you're driving the truck, it's going to be on the left side. It's a data port. That's where your e-logs are plugging into, and all the information is coming in through that data port. So you're either going to have your onboard computer that's going to be able to give you a code, or you'll have to get an OBD2 scanner. Now, there are some aftermarket OBD2 scanners that you can read codes. I would suggest if you do get one and you have one that can clear codes or that can do forest regens and you have an after treatment issue, just use that to be able to get to a shop and get it fixed. Because if you are having an issue and you're just clearing the codes out and not actually getting it fixed, all you're doing is going to be prolonging that problem. So that problem can still exist, but you're clearing the codes. And the way that these codes are actually set, not all of them, if a sensor's reading out of its parameters, not all of them are going to give a code right away. Some of them have like minimum counts that has to happen. So if, for example, if a code comes up for a sensor and it only happens once, not all the time the computer is going to say, okay, this is a fault. The computer is set and programmed in some parameters for that fault to happen multiple times for it to actually throw a check engine light. So that way you won't have any false readings. So if you are going to be investing in an OBD2 scanner, if you're a driver and you don't want to spend a lot and you want to just get an aftermarket scanner just to be able to read codes, that's good. Or clear the codes to get you to a shop. But I wouldn't use that as a permanent fix, because if you have a check engine, like as I mentioned, that keeps coming up and you're just clearing it out, you're just prolonging the problem. So definitely get that checked out. OBD2 scanners are probably going to be your best bet. If you're a technician and you're looking to invest into scanners, what you can do is you can go with just a generic scanner. If you want to spend some money on getting some good scanners, NextLink IQ is a really good source. They have a pretty large scanner that you can use, and that's going to help you read codes. But when you really want to get into the diagnosing parts and get literature on it, you're going to have to actually buy the licenses from the manufacturers, which is mostly going to either be PSL for Detroit. It's also going to be either a PTT for Volvo. PACCAR has their own software as well, and Cummins as well. So what I've noticed is with Cummins and PACCAR, they're really kind of just isolated. So not all the time you're going to get too many functions with the OBD2 scanner. You're not going to be able to fix everything. All you're going to be able to do is pull codes and maybe clear them. Cummins and PACCAR are really picky. You definitely got to get licensed to be able to get troubleshooting and information on Cummins. Because even if you have, say for example, you have Insight. Insight is made for Cummins. Now, just because you have Insight and you're working on heavy duty, Insight does cover a lot of different platforms. A lot of different models for Cummins. So, but if you're working on light duty like Dodge, anything that's in a Dodge, Chrysler has their own software. So even if you're working on a 6.7 that's in a pickup, you won't be able to hook up. But if it's in an actual Freightliner, you're going to be able to hook up with Insight. But you won't be able to hook up if it's in the Chrysler or Dodge. Or Dodge is Chrysler. But you'll have to actually buy the software either from Snap-on or Chrysler. You have to look for their software, which can get pretty pricey, kind of like Ford. Ford has their own software. So OBD2 scanners are good to just kind of check it out and get your readings. Really important to retrieve those fault codes. The next topic I want to discuss is visual inspections. You want to conduct a thorough inspection, examination of all the engine of the engine, belts, hoses, and other components to spot visual problems and signs of wear. Now, a check engine light, if you go out and look, usually you're not going to find something that you can just fix and oh, okay, that's it. I mean, if you have a sensor and you can see that it maybe got disconnected or the connection on it's corroded or something like that, then yeah, definitely. But when you check your engine and you're diagnosing many problems or whatever problem that you have, you want to look for anything that's irregular. Okay, any major oil leaks, you want to listen to the engine, see if it has got a mist to it, if it sounds different to you. Look at the belts. If you have an issue, say for example your truck's overheating and your water pump is belt driven, that can be an indication of a truck getting hot. You know, if we're diagnosing problems on a semi is going to be broad. So if you have an overheating problem, if you see something's up and my truck's not cooling off, And when you get out and inspect that and you see a belt from a tensioner that might tighten up, that's another thing. If you just see a belt that's fell off or a belt that's not there, it could have been burned off. That belt maybe have burned off because of a bad tensioner. So whenever you do replace belts, be sure to inspect all the pulleys and tensioners as well, because if you just throw another belt on, you have a locked up idler or a locked up tensioner, you're just going to burn that belt up right away. So definitely, if belts come off or they burned off or something like that, they're definitely going to have some it happened for a reason. It could be for a tensioner or idler. Check your hoses if you're overheating or if you're smoking, if the truck is smoking. Check for any coolant leaks on your hoses. A lot of these hoses can start leaking over time, over 500,000 miles. It's just normal wear and tear. Those types of wear right there are very visual. You'll be able to see that. That is something visual. If you're looking around your exhaust system and you see a lot of soot is going to be that black. It's just kind of like black smoke chalk that's going to be on the exhaust. And if you could have issues with an exhaust leak, or if you have something that leaks around your turbo, have low boost, if you have intake leaks and you're not having power, these are all items that you want to check. I share videos with soap and water. Soap and water helps a lot. So if you do have low boost or something going on with excessive fuel consumption, then you definitely can take a look at it with soap and water. So visual inspections are very important. This is why anytime that we work on a truck at our shop, we definitely do a thorough visual inspection just to kind of catch anything that could come up. If a driver comes in or a customer comes in, if you're a technician and you're looking over a truck, and say, for example, they have something going on with the engine, go ahead, as I mentioned before, look over and do a good visual inspection, check everything out. You might be able to catch a wheel seal for them and get that done, because if a wheel seal's leaking and they come in for another problem and they get back on the road, and a lot of these trucks are running for a pretty long distance, it's definitely going to they're gonna blame you because you're the last person that looked at the truck. I hope everybody's having a good evening. Got a couple of days. We got one more day till New Year's if you're following the calendar. But if you're working through the new year, you're not alone. You're not alone. Just like Christmas, we got to keep working. We got to keep working through it. I appreciate you guys joining us this evening. I'm going to get to the chats here shortly. I want to go ahead and get more information out to you guys. The next item or the next topic I want to discuss is fluid analysis. Now, if you're going to do a fluid, check the levels and the condition of your fluid, oil, coolant, transmission fluid to identify potential problems. If you're having issues with, say for example, you have issues with low oil pressure. There's a few things that can cause low oil pressure. One of them is going to be if your oil change or your oil is very long extended and you look at the dipstick and the oil just looks all sooty. Or if you have diesel going into your fuel, you're going to see the level of your oil rising. Or if you have coolant leaking inside the engine, you'll be able to notice that in your oil. And if it gets to a point where your oil is kind of like milky, that right there is not a good indicator. You want to be able to catch things before it gets to that point. So I would definitely consider doing oil analysis as well when you come in and do an oil change. There's oil analysis labs, mostly out of Houston. They'll send you a bottle, and basically you can give that bottle to your technician, or if you're a technician or a shop, you can offer this service and just send them off to the oil sample labs. Now, this is a good practice because the oil analysis is going to help you catch items before they actually get to a point where they damage the engine. Because if you get to a point where your oil is very milky, you're actually to a point where you may have damaged that engine already. Even with diesel in the oil can damage the engine, because both contaminations, what happens is the oil is, of course, it's made to lubricate the bearings, lubricate everything that's inside the engine, and the tolerance is very tight. If you look, they're not like actual, whenever we talk about bearings, they're not like ball bearings, excuse me. They're just kind of like just two pieces of metal that are half cup shaped like this, and they go together. And for example, if we're talking about a piston rod bearing or a crankshaft bearing, main bearing, now these bearings is what they're designed to wear, but they're going to wear over time. Now, the way that oil is getting to these bearings is there's journals that are drilled through the crankshaft. There's journals that are just drilled all through the whole engine to help provide oil throughout the whole system. Now, that thin layer of oil is getting pumped in between those journals, or the actual oil galleries, and being fed just a thin little film of oil is what's being lubricated in there. So that's what actually keeps your engine from wearing. So once you have contamination like oil or coolant or diesel, it's losing its ability to lubricate those correctly, and what happens is it overheats. So when those bearings are overheating from it's just rotating, and of course with metal on metal there's friction, and that thin film of oil that's always there, it keeps that friction from getting so hot, and that's what keeps your engine from actually burning up or locking up. So if you have contamination, that oil and that mixture or that contamination is going to overheat those bearings, cause those bearings to get hot, and you can scar them. Once they scar, it will turn, it will rotate, there won't be no oil left going in there, cause oil starvation, you have a locked engine. So trying to catch these problems before they can happen is the key, especially if you have a truck, it's your only truck, or if you're a fleet owner and you have many trucks. You can kind of adopt this practice of doing oil analysis to kind of keep you ahead of the game. It's kind of like blood test for your truck. So that's very, very important. And you can do the same thing with transmission oil. Oils are usually replaced at 500,000 miles, but you can do them sooner. I would say maybe every other year, because just because they say, hey, you can run them forever, I would not do that, especially with transmission oils. Even the modern trucks have gotten a little bit better with putting sensors on the transmission, so you can actually see oil get low in a transmission. But some of these trucks, they don't even have sensors for the oil on the transmission, and you could lose all your oil in your transmission and not even know. And by the time you know, that the transmission's burned up. And I've seen it a lot. I've seen it many times before. You guys will try to, you guys are on the road for a long extended period of time, so you're not able to check that oil all the time. So when you do have a leak, and for some reason they don't have sensors on all the transmissions, so if that oil level gets low, you can burn that transmission. Mostly on manuals, I see that happen mostly on manuals. I appreciate everybody that's joined us. It's been a long week. We got more content coming your way. Got to shoot a video this weekend, so hopefully to get that out to you next week. And if you guys got any ideas or anything you want us to shoot, give us a shout in the comments. Let us know what you like for us to do for you. If you are using a good company for your oil lab, shout out to us. Let us know which one you're using and how that's working out for you. If you are doing fluid analysis and it's working for you, share it in the comments, share it in the chat, so that other people can see that this is not just something that we're coming up with. Also, differentials are something that needs to be done. You do a 3-box change is what they call it. Your transmission and your 2 differentials. I would do that at 500,000. And then go ahead and just inspect that oil, and you want to make sure you don't have a lot of metal. Whenever you check oil in the transmission, the automatic ones have a sight glass, but most transmissions you're going to have to remove the plug where you fill it, and just put your finger in there and just kind of make sure the oil is just level. So if you take the top off and the level is about right there, you're gonna feel the oil. That's gonna be good enough. If you gotta put your finger all the way down to feel that oil, I would go ahead and replace the oil and go ahead and put some new oil in there. If you are checking the oil and you say, for example, you have a truck with very high mileage and you're working on it and they want to do a oil change, or they want to change the oil on their transmission, you can inspect that oil while you drop it. You drop the oil from the drain plug on the transmission, and you can watch that oil. You can examine the oil while it's going down. You can see kind of metallic, some kind of glitter. It looks like glitter in there, or the plug itself will have metal. It's also on the differential. Whenever you check the oil, if you have a lot of metal, light pieces is normal wear, but if you have big chunks in there, definitely going to need to get that looked at. With differentials, I also would like to bring up your breathing. It's a breather hose on the differentials, excuse me. Make sure that breather hose is not clogged up, and there's another. It's just like a pressure. It's just on the top of I don't have the exact term for it, but it's on top of the differential, and it's just kind of like has a little top on it, and it's loose. That's to let air out as well once the differential gets warm, and once that oil gets hot and it needs to breathe. If that thing is all dirty, it's got a lot of gunk built up on it, that's gonna not allow that differential to breathe and let that pressure out, and it could cause it to actually spew out of there. So make sure that that's clean as well whenever you're checking that out. Appreciate everybody that's joined us. Thank you guys. Appreciate everyone that's hitting us up in the comments. If you want to get a super chat, if you want your comment to be highlighted, hit us up on the super chat. The next item I want to discuss is compression testing. This is the next tip I want to talk about, is the compression testing. I appreciate everyone that's joined us. Fluid analysis, as we spoke about. Now we're talking about compression tests. Measuring cylinder compression to assess the health of the engine and identify potential internal problems. It's the same with an oil analysis. You're assessing the health of the engine. Now with a compression test, with the newer modern engines, you can do this. Some of the older engines you can actually do compression tests. If you look at the thumbnail that I put up for this video, or this broadcast, it is a readout of a compression test. Now, basically what the compression test does is just reads the pressure between all cylinders. It deactivates the actual ignition of the truck, so it doesn't allow the truck to start, but you're going to just turn the key and let that rotation happen, and it's going to measure the compression and give you a readout on the compression of each cylinder. Now, there is a tolerance, I would say about 15%. You don't want a big difference. If you have a cylinder that has low compression, then that's something that definitely needs to be looked at. Signs of low compression is going to just be, you'll be able to notice lower power, higher fuel consumption, it'll be a miss. And when you do a compression test, and we see low compression, the first thing we're going to do is recommend valve adjustments. This is why it's very important to keep up with maintenance and keep up with your valve adjustments, because if you have valves that are out of adjustment, it's definitely going to affect the compression. Now, if you have a truck with low compression, your valves have just been done, then it's something else that needs to be looked at. If they already checked the injector hold down bolts and you're not losing any compression, or there's not any, if you have low compression, and it's actually the engine and it's not the it would be the engine if it's valve adjustments, but if it's not the valves and you have that compression going into the crankcase and you have excessive crankcase pressure, then that could be something else. It can be a cylinder. It could be a cylinder. It could be a scuff liner or piston rings. My apologies, it's been a long day. Still trying to get these lives out to you guys, but a worn out piston ring or a sleeve, a scuff liner, that's gonna allow whenever that engine hits that power stroke, when you have that combustion and it pushes that piston back down, that when it does that piston needs to be sealed to that liner. So if you have scuff liner or you have worn out piston rings, that compression is actually going to go past that and it's going to go down into the crankcase, and you can lose pressure right there. This is what we see a lot in the deletes that we see. This is why we're so against the deletes. I know a lot of operators out there are trying to eliminate the after treatment system. But what it does, as I mentioned before in a lot of my broadcasts, is you're uploading a older log file or not even a matching log file for that particular truck. So you're dumping more fuel. They do the block off plate, and what that does is create more heat in that cylinder. When that happens, when you have too much heat in that cylinder, what happens is that piston starts to expand. So with heat and metal, it expands. So when metal's heated, when it's expanding, you have such a tight clearance already in that cylinder and that liner so when it actually expands, it's going to start actually scraping that cylinder over time and cause you to have a worn out cylinder, scuff liners, blow by, and just basically have low compression. So compression tests are very useful, especially if you're using the right computers. OBD2 scanners are not going to let you do a compression test. OBD2 scanners are just going to allow you to get the code readout and give you some explanation. So if you have a truck that's getting low compression, that's definitely something that needs to be looked at. Something that's high mileage, I would definitely get it looked at, get the maintenance done on it, and hopefully you won't have to actually get into that engine. I appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. Thank you. Hope everyone's having a good holiday. We got New Year's on Monday. If you guys are celebrating New Year's, congratulations. If you have to work through New Year's, it's okay. You're not the only one. You're not the only one. The next topic we're going to discuss is exhaust gas analysis, analyzing exhaust gases to diagnose engine performance and emissions related. So if you're going down the road and you see a whole trail of black smoke, coming out of your pipe, definitely get that checked out. Okay. Also, if you're idling and if you have any kind of smoke or any kind of colored smoke coming out of your exhaust, you want to get that checked out, because it could be something. It's definitely going to be something going on upstream. Now, I know that sometimes it could be complicated to see what's coming out of your exhaust, because now you have after treatment systems. So the exhaust has to go through the after treatment system. So not all the time you're going to be able to see what's going on if you have a lot of smoke coming out of your truck. So it's definitely, if you're having problems and you feel irregular problems, when I talked about MPGs on the other broadcast, if you're seeing your MPGs dropping, excessive fuel consumption, oil consumption, stuff like that, that's definitely signs that something could be going on. So inspecting your exhaust, if you have access to your exhaust, that's good practice. But if you don't have access to your exhaust, then you're definitely going to have to either check to see this, if you're burning oil or burning excessive fuel. Those are going to be items to take a look at. Appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. Let me know where you're watching from. Appreciate everybody's support. If you want your comment highlighted, be sure to hit us up on Super Chat. The next topic I want to discuss is electrical system testing. This is something that I brought up earlier, but I want to talk, and mostly I want to talk about batteries and alternators and stuff like that, because even your starter, you want to make sure all your electrical is good. If you have batteries that are very old, and you have, as I mentioned, some of these sensors are getting very low voltage. They're getting 5 volts to them, and they also either getting a ground or just a return. So if you have loose connections on your battery, then your ECM is not getting all the power it needs, or any loose connections anywhere. Ground is very important. Ground is just as important as power. You can have some good batteries and everything's tight, and you say you have a loose ground on your starter, or your starter, one of the nuts are coming loose on your starter, and your ground's messing up. That can cause a lot of problems as well. That can cause you it will cause you some irregular problems, erratic issues. So definitely getting your batteries checked out or examining your batteries, keeping your batteries good. Don't go too long. I know they are not that cheap, but I would say batteries are probably every 2 years. There's a lot of stress that goes on to batteries. Definitely choosing your right batteries, your cranking amps, get your right cranking amps. When you're inspecting batteries, you want to make sure they're not really swole. You can look at your batteries and see if they're bloated or swollen. That's going to tell you indication of a bad battery, or they smell really bad. Be careful when you're messing with these batteries. If they look swole and they smell, make sure to get those replaced. And if you can do it yourself, that's fine. But be careful if you're replacing batteries on your own. If you're a new technician or someone that's very new into this, you want to mark everything or take a picture. I would mark everything, zip tie the wires that are together, because there's a lot of wires and a lot of cables that go onto the battery. And whenever you're putting them on, they're gonna chain themselves together. So you'll have the power strip that'll connect all your 4 batteries together, all your 4 terminals, and you'll have ground as well. So be careful when you're taking all that off. Be sure you're not hitting your wrench against, if you're wrenching things off, and you say, for example, you're on the power on the power nut or on the power, and you're wrenching it off. If you wrench it and you hit the metal on the battery box housing or anything on the frame, it's gonna spark. So be cautious of that, and be careful with. I've seen this happen where either a technician or someone that's not too familiar with changing out batteries. I know it might sound easy, but there's tons of cables going to these batteries. So if you don't mark them, and then you put the batteries back on, because you have to remove everything. You have to move those strips. You got to move all the cables out of the way so that you can actually extract these batteries and then put them back in. Most of these batteries should be with a bracket, and they should be held in place. So they're going to have to take that off as well to be able to get them out. You're not going to have to just take the cables out and pull them out. They're going to be locked in there, and you can have to fight them off, get those brackets off, get the batteries off, put them back on. And if you don't mark your cables, because by the time you get these batteries out and you go get them changed out, or if you're doing it yourself or you're a technician and we don't have batteries in stock or whatnot, you have to wait on the batteries. Once you put these batteries back on, if you didn't mark your cables, you're going to have all these cables all over the place. And I've seen it before where someone can install it incorrectly, and either you have a no start condition, or you have batteries that get drained because you didn't install them right, and you could have a ground going to the wrong area. Some of these grounds could be light, and then you put them in a wrong area, and it's going to drain that battery over time. I've seen that before. Also with starters, if you're working on starters, I wouldn't suggest somebody if you're super mechanically inclined and you're up for changing out a starter, kudos to you. But I would definitely leave it up to a mechanic, an experienced mechanic, because think about starters. They're not in a very easy area to get to. They've never been taken off. They were put on when the engine was actually out of the truck during manufacturing. So they've never been taken off. Some of the bolts, they'll have 3 bolts on them. 2 of them are very easy to get to because they're going to be on the outside of the engine. 1 of them is going to be on the inside of the engine. Very tough to get to. You have to have the right sockets. You want to get talking about sockets, be sure if it's like a 16 point, make sure it's the right socket that you're using. Deep socket, impact sockets, and get the extension in there, and make sure you're on that bolt really well, because if you're not on that bolt and you're not using the right socket and you use a gun, an air gun or a powerful gun, you could strip that. You could strip that bolt, and then you're just causing a starter replacement can go on for a long time. And starters are not that great to replace. It's very tight. And be sure, if you are removing the cables, what I usually do when I replace a starter, I'll say, for example, of course you disconnect the batteries, and if I want to start with the power cables, all the power cables that are going to the starter, the positive, when I pull that bolt off, I get those cables and I'll put a zip tie in between. I'll put a zip tie through the hole that you're actually that bolts onto because your cables are gonna have a hole. It's gonna have a cable, and you can just put it in the bolt, put it on the bolt, and then put your nut on. So when you pull all these cables off, put zip ties through it. Put a zip tie through it, and now you got all your powers together. Now you can move over to your negative. Move your negative. Once you have your negatives removed, put a zip tie on those. Keep those all separated. Now you can work on getting that starter off. You definitely use some PB Blaster WD-40, something to lubricate those bolts to get them off. I know not all the time it's going to penetrate all the way through there. Sometimes you might have to heat it. If it gets to a point where you have to heat it, make sure you're using experienced technicians and not burn your truck up. If you do replace your starter, you're not putting those cables together and not keeping those cables, together, and you mix them up, you can cause power issues. Also, alternators are very important as well. I see a lot of aftermarket alternators, rebuild alternators. Some of these alternators, I would definitely go with the same alternator that you have. There's different alternators that you can go with a smaller alternator, or if you're trying to save some money, I would definitely go with the same size alternator, because as that truck, of course, it's a big truck that you're using a lot of power, and you don't want a alternator to go bad on you soon just because you're trying to save money. The same way with the cables, any kind of electrical thing, any kind of electrical repairs that you're doing, whether you're a technician or you're a driver, be sure to mark and wrap those cables together, because it's very easy to mix those cables up. Very easy. So definitely keep those cables together. It's very important to make sure that power is good all around your truck. I see this a lot with Volvos. Volvos got a bunch of check engines, bunch of problems come in. You hook up the computer and you have tons of inactive codes and active codes, and just erratic stuff. If it has a lot of related problems to do with electric, definitely check your batteries. You should be checking your batteries. Either if you're a technician or a driver and you're working on a truck, you should be checking those batteries regularly, because that is where a lot of the problems are going to exist when it comes to check engines. You have low cranking, and the reason why I also recommend getting those batteries checked and load tested and replacing them regularly is because it takes a lot of effort to turn these big ass engines. And since you don't have a actual igniter spark plug on these big engines, you're depending on compression, heated compression, to actually ignite that fuel. So that starter is doing a lot of work. I did a video on whenever you actually prime a system and you have to start it. Sometimes you have to hold that starter. I wouldn't hold it more than 5 seconds. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let it cool down a little bit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All right, let it cool off. Let it cool off a little bit. Let it cool off. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And that's if you have a hard start issue. If you can't get that started after 3 5-second turns, you might have something going on. Make sure that you have fuel going to your truck. Make sure that if it's after an oil change and it's a DD15, make sure you're priming that system correctly, because you can burn those starters up. Some starters will have like an overheating switch, but I would not depend on that overheating switch, because there's so many aftermarket parts out there that sometimes a technician or a shop will not put the same kind of starter that you have. It may be the same power, like the same amount of power that it's turning, but it might not have all the same features, like the overheating switch, which actually turns the starter off when it actually gets hot and doesn't allow you to try to turn it anymore. But I don't see that on all starters. So be very cautious whenever you have a no start condition and you're turning this truck over more and more. Appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. I'm excited to get to these chats, so I'll be there shortly, guys. The next item I'm going to be talking about is brake system inspection. All right. I think I covered everything with the batteries, alternator, and starter. Okay, electrical systems are very important. We did talk about the alternator. The alternator, you don't want to get the wrong alternator. So let's move on to the next item, which is brake system inspection. So brake system inspection, say if you have if you have something that smells bad, if it's smelling bad, or if you have issues with braking, or you have some smoke coming out of your trough, your trailer, you see your wheels smoking, or you see something going on, definitely check those brakes out. If you're a driver or a technician, if for a technician or a driver, what a tip that I can give you is using a thermometer. They have not the infrared, but yeah, it's basically infrared, where you could just point the thermometer at something and get the temperature off of it. DeWalt makes them. They make tons of them, and they're not really expensive. So those are really good. Like, say for example, you just got off a long trip. You can use that to kind of test your wheels out to see what's the heat on each wheel. And you kind of want to use that to kind of see, oh, if I have a brake that's dragging, or if I have issues going on with a brake not functioning properly, if it's locking up. That right there is going to tell you, oh, okay, well, this brake is hotter than this brake. They're going to be hot. You don't want to touch them with your hand. It's just like a disc brake, especially with disc brakes. You don't want to touch them with your hands if the truck just got off the road, because it could be very hot. Got an advert coming up. Let me know what that advert says. Anyway, those thermometers are very useful. We use them for AC. After we change AC, you can also use them for checking out your manifold. You can shoot your manifold, your exhaust manifold, and check each one and see if the temperature's right. If this temperature is the same all the way across, then it's good. But inspecting your brake system is very important. You want to examine your brake system, including pads, discs, liners, to identify any braking issues. Now, if you see brake pads that are just full of oil, that's an indicator of a wheel seal leaking, and you want to get that replaced right away, because with that brake friction on the brake drums, and of course the brake pads or brake shoes, I don't want to get those wrong, brake shoes, it can actually catch fire. Now, I've seen this before with mostly on trailers, and if that catches fire, those trailers are very, very flammable. Okay, the whole floor is made out of wood, which is the best wood that can burn. It's very dry wood. Those dry vents can burn up very easily. So if you have some brakes that catch on fire on your trailer, definitely be cautious. That's why they want you to carry fire extinguishers. But if you get to a point where your brakes catch on fire on a trailer, it's going to be very tough to put that out with the fire extinguisher, especially the ones that they carry in the trucks. So be sure to get those have that checked out if you're a driver. And I know that I'm giving you a lot of information on, oh man, I got to check all this, but it's just getting into the habit of checking them out. You're already walking around your truck. Invest in that thermal gun, shoot it after if you're in the fuel aisle and you just got and you're waiting to get out, shoot your brakes, shoot your disc to see how everything looks in your trailer. Make sure nothing's hung up, make sure nothing's getting hot. If you can get under your truck and inspect the brakes, get a light, make sure those pads look good, they're not sticking out. You can see if your pads are sticking out, you're sticking out of your drum, or the brake shoes are sticking out of your drum. That's an indication of you could have some S-cam bushings that are bad. S-cam bushings are very important to replace as well. If you're not replacing S-cam bushings, it's going to keep that brake. It's going to let that brake pad come out. Also, reusing drums, I would only reuse them one time. I would recommend replacing them after the second time, because what happens is a brake drum starts to bell out. It starts to whenever the brake drum either gets worn by a wave, or it gets belled out, kind of like a bell. So when that happens and you have brake drums that are worn like a slant, and then you put brand new brake pads and the brake pad is flat, you're not going to get all that braking power. The brake shoe is only going to hit on the edge and not all the way onto the brake drum like it's supposed to. I know replacing brakes can be pricey, especially the drums, but it is a little bit more cost. It's less cost than actually doing brake discs. So if you do have brake discs, those can be pretty pricey. All right, so be sure to check your brakes if you're having any problems with that. We are discussing diagnostic tips. I appreciate everyone that's joined us. The next topic I want to discuss is air system inspection. Inspect the air intake and filtration system for blockage or damage. Now, the soap and water is gonna be your best bet if you have low boost or excessive fuel consumption. That's gonna be a good tool to use is the soap and water. Checking your clamps, making sure the clamps aren't all loose. Some of these trucks come with manufactured clamps that don't have so you can reuse them. Those clamps, they wear out over time. On those Volvos, I would definitely replace those. If you have some repair done just recently on anything, some of that tubing for the turbo, for example, the Volvo, it runs up under the truck, and it's got like these two blue O-rings that fit in there. And I don't know why they designed it that way, because I see a lot of leaks coming from that area. And the way to pull that pipe off, it's bolted to the engine and it comes from the bottom. So you have to unbolt it and then kind of pull it out of there and then put those new O-rings. And not all the time it's really a snug fit. I don't really like that design. If you have just the blue hoses on there, those are good as well. But that's a real good source. That's a definite source of leakage right there. On the intake side as well, it might not be that easy to find by idling. So if you have a boost issue or a suspected low boost problem, you can either invest yourself if you're a technician and you can buy the boost test kit, or you can go to a shop that has a boost test kit. And what we do is we'll take the air filter housing off and we'll put a boot and then inject air into the system so we can soap and water the whole thing, because idling, you're not really producing any boost. So it's really tough you're not going to be able to find any leaks at idle when you're just idling the truck. So doing boost pressure tests is very useful if you're just if you are a driver and you don't have this type of stuff. What y'all would do for you, or I would recommend for you, is just at least do the soap and water to try to find leaks. Look at the clamps, and also make sure your air filter is being replaced. Like, I would recommend replacing your air filter every 2 to 3 months. Those air filters can get clogged up very quickly. I appreciate everybody that's joined us this evening. Thank you guys for watching. Be sure to share any information that you guys would like to share, any different tips, some tips that you use to diagnose as well. Now, the next item I want to talk about is sensor testing. Check sensors such as mass flow sensors and oxygen sensors to identify issues affecting fuel efficiency. Okay, so testing sensors, of course, you need laptops to test sensors. So that's definitely important to do. I like recommending to check your sensors like 400, 500,000 miles, especially your intake sensor, differential pressure sensors for your EGR, exhaust pressure sensors, anything that's connected to the intake exhaust that's reading pressure, because you can have, what kind of pressure it's reading is exhaust pressure. With exhaust, you're going to have soot. Okay, so over time, that soot can build up on the sensors, on the intake sensors, on the boost pressure sensors, on the differential pressure sensors. And when that happens, what basically is happening is, like a mass flow sensor or intake sensor, it's reading air that's passing through it, okay? Or a pressure sensor is, of course, reading how much pressure is going to that sensor. When you have a clogged sensor from clogged up soot, clogged up carbon that builds up on these sensors, whether it's on a mass flow sensor, those sensors or intake sensors, if they get built up with soot, and here you are replacing this, replacing that, you need a new turbo and this and that, and problems still happening, those sensors definitely can be clogged up. And one thing I'd like to mention, some of these trucks, mostly the modern ones, you have to reset the system. Like, you have to go into the computer and reset, hey, I replaced this. You don't have to type it out, but there's functions in the softwares that you use and that we use that let us reset certain items, especially sensor items, because what happens is the engine starts to read and get used to whatever pressures they're reading from all these different sensors in the truck. So if this sensor is starting to read a little bit off, then of course the truck is adjusting, the ECM is adjusting. Okay, now if you put new sensors on there, it's still going to try to be adjusting to what your old sensor was reading. Now you can have either more fueling happening. Now this function is not available for all models. It's mostly going to be available and it's recommended on Volvos. Okay, so Volvos, you definitely have the function to reset the ECM and the calibration on all that whenever you replace sensors. So when you do sensor testing, when I mentioned what a laptop can do, a laptop can definitely help a lot, especially if you have after treatment problems and you're doing a force regen or a park regen. You can we read the parameters. Reading the parameters is very important because you want to make sure everything's, for example, if you're looking at a regen, you have differential pressure sensor, you have temperature sensor coming into the DOC, you have temperature sensor coming out of the DOC, you have temperature sensor going into DPF, you have temperature sensor going into the SCR. All that's being monitored. Also, you have sensors reading turbos, reading RPMs, reading boost pressure. All these sensors are reading. So if you see something that's out of range, even a barometric pressure sensor, which is basically the sensor that reads your elevation and where you're at, and you get into a high elevated area, that's really where it makes a difference. But if you have a bad sensor, it's definitely going to cause you, it's going to think you're in an elevated area and cause you to run funny. But these different types of sensors can cause low fuel efficiency, can cause excessive fuel consumption. So it's definitely important. And when I mentioned at the beginning of the broadcast, when we're looking at code readouts, if you have a code on your transmission, what's good about these newer transmissions is we can do a lot of different things to test the transmission, especially the automated transmissions. You can, the DT12, you can go in there and run functionality tests and make sure that it's going into gear correctly. And it even gives you how much, how far along your clutch is being, if your clutch is worn, if you have life, how much life you have on your clutch. Really very helpful. It helps. You can test it to see if it goes into gear, if it's going out of gear. You can see what type of codes it has, like what type of issues you're having. If you're having drivability issues, and I pull up the computer and say I'm having issues with not going into gear, I can see the transmission and say we see it a lot where you have air system problems where you're not getting enough air pressure. A lot of these automated systems are using air pressure, air solenoids to run the transmission. So if there is problems where you're not getting enough air, or you got an air leak, or you got an actuator that's bad, the computer is definitely going to help us pinpoint that out. So the last item I want to discuss, and I'm not trying to get through this, but the last item, because sensors, we could talk about sensors for a really long time. There's different tests that we can run. We just talked about the compression test. That's just one. There's another test that we run when we do any kind of fuel, any repairs on the fuel system. What we always do at the end of our repairs, we do quality control checks, which is definitely testing what we just repaired, because we don't want problems happening on the road again or any comebacks. But if we do any kind of repairs on the fuel system, what we like to run, especially high pressure fuel systems, we can run fuel integrity tests, which is something that Detroit runs. There's other tests that runs as well with Volvo, but these tests are going to allow us to bring this fuel pressure up to operating pressure to kind of see if we have any problems. And what I like about that these tests is it does a leak down test. So once the engine shut off, you're going to lose rail pressure, but there's going to be a certain amount of rail pressure you should lose in a certain amount of time. So as soon as that truck turns off, if you lose all your rail pressure, like right away as soon as the engine turns off, then you can definitely have some internal leaks or something going on with either a leaking injector, O-ring, something going on there. So that's really important to do the sensor testing. The last item I want to discuss is data logging. Utilizing specialized tools to record and analyze real-time data from various vehicle systems, aiding in diagnosing intermitting problems. Now, data logging mostly is going to be for using a laptop, and The data logging is basically, we're going to be able to look at all this information and see what type of codes you're having, if you're having electrical problems, if you're having issues with ABS, if you're having a bunch of ABS problems, or if you have intermitting problems. Inactive codes, if you have something that's inactive and you come in and whatever you're reporting, if whatever the driver concern is related to an inactive code, we definitely have to check an inactive code as well. Just because the code is inactive does not mean that that we shouldn't troubleshoot that code. And that code could be inactive because it's only happening in certain conditions, in certain operating conditions. So if you have a fault that's happening going uphill, or when the truck is under extreme load, or after being on the road for a long time, definitely get those checked out as well, because just ignoring inactive codes can definitely, and this is why I'm not a big fan of the scanners, or the OBD2 scanners that just clear out codes. Because if you have one of those and you're clearing out codes, and then you bring it into a technician because you can't figure out what's going on with it, or you're a technician and you can't figure out yourself, and you don't have the right equipment to troubleshoot it, and all you do is clear out codes. Now you have a cleared out code, and the problem still exists. And as I mentioned earlier in the broadcast, some of these codes some of these errors, some of these faults need to happen multiple times for it to throw a check engine light. So it can be very, very challenging to find out what's going on with these. But that's why diagnosing can be very tricky. We do a lot of diagnosing at our shop. So if you are in the DFW area, you can give us a call at 972-225-3017. We're located at 4140 Langdon Road, which is just off of Interstate 20 in Bonneview. If you come through that area and you're having problems, or you're in the DFW area and you have issues with your truck and you're looking for a shop that's very familiar with diagnosing, we've already built like a small network in our shop, which we're all communicating with each other. We all see the codes that come in. We're all getting feedback. We're all looking at what's going on. I'm looking up codes. We got Francisco looking up codes. We're all looking up codes as a technician, and we got 4 people working together to try to figure out, hey, well, we all checked this. We did check that. We checked this, to try to help, because we understand that some of these codes are going to be popping up when you're on the road. You may have cleared it. Some of these issues are not that easy to find. So definitely, and we always want to try to be as accurate as possible, because we are very cautious about what we're going to be replacing, because we want to ensure that we fix the root cause of the problem. Because without fixing the root cause of the problem, you're definitely going to have comebacks, and you're definitely going to have ongoing issues. So data logging is very important. I like using it. I like using abuse reports. I like using driver history. I like using also DDAC reports. DDAC reports all these reports are very useful, because it's going to give you the actual history of what's going on with that truck, how much idling it's doing, even with hard braking, if it's doing a lot of hard braking, if it's speeding, going over, most of the time it's driving over 80 miles an hour, 70 miles an hour. If it's having failed regens, if you have a lot of canceled regens, or regens that are not actually completing, those are issues that can be as well. A lot of times you can see a lot of idling. The idling shows, this truck is idling a lot. This is causing after treatment problems. So I hope all this information was helpful for anyone that's watching this broadcast. It is my goal to you be able to take something out of this show. If one person is able to take one thing off of this show, I feel like I've done what I was supposed to do. I appreciate everyone that's joined us in this chat. I got a few chats here. Let me start getting to them. Edgar, I know that was at the beginning of the broadcast. You said hello. Brian says, you make me want to be a mechanic. How long and how much is the schooling? We're going to be offering a program pretty soon, so keep us in mind. Send me your contact information, info@tatexpressinc.com. Send me your info and I'll give you more information. Edgar's watching out of Waxahachie, Texas. Hey, how you doing? Francisco, if you've been to our shop, you've met Francisco. And he's the GM there, and Waxahachie is where he's from. So that's nice to know. Brian's watching from Houston, Texas. Oh, Houston, Texas. There's a lot of work down there. How you guys doing in Houston, Texas? Curious. An hour out here, South Texas. Eddie says he's watching from Savannah, Georgia. Got Oakland, California in the house. Welcome. Oakland, California. Jamie, thanks for joining us again this evening. If you got any questions, hit us up. If you're even a technician and you got some questions, hit me up. If there's something that I didn't cover, let me know. I'll make sure to try to cover that a little bit more. I try to cover most as I could. Had a long day, a long work day today. Got a technician here saying that he's doing road service. He said go out to Tyler and Dallas for road calls in Baton Rouge East, but now I cut my area way back on road calls. Yeah, road calls can be challenging. Shout out to you on those road calls. I saw a video. It actually wasn't a video. It was a memory that was on my feed. If you guys want to follow us on our Facebook, follow us on our Facebook and Instagram. Most of the stuff that I share on the channel, I'm sharing the same on the Instagram. I would probably have to try to start doing, we need to start doing different content so you guys will be interested in following us on the Facebook. But what I was going to mention with roll calls is I had a memory pop up, and it was, let me tell you this story. All right, so I was doing road calls we're off of 40. This is when we're off of Interstate 45 coming out of Houston, but we're in Dallas. And I had a really early road call, and I think I shared this story once before, but let me share it again. If you guys heard it, you're just hearing it again. If it's your first time hearing it, here it goes. So it's a road call. It's a rainy morning. I go out there and I'm taking my service truck, and the report, I get the call from the dispatcher. The dispatcher says, hey, I got my truck on the side of the road. Go look. Can you look at it and let me know? So I go out there, and it's raining cats and dogs. Finally, I get to the truck, and I see it. It's on the shoulder, and it already has his triangles out. And I was like, oh, what's going on here? So I get in, I take a look at it, and I can see that he basically lost all his air pressure. So his brakes locked up. So I'm looking to see what's going on, and I noticed this valve's broken on his air tanks. This is on, I think it was a Cascadia. And no, it wasn't a Cascadia. It was a Century. My apologies. It was a Century class. And there was a valve that was broken off. And I noticed some other tubes, brake hoses ripped off on the trailer as well. And I'm like, well, how did this happen? So I look back, and the road is early in the morning, so the road's barely starting to get busy on 45's very, very big highway. And I'm looking back, and I see he's coming, the way that he was parked, he's coming out of the grass. So when I look at the trail, I can see that he came off the freeway. So basically, he came off the freeway and took out a sign, because I noticed there's a sign maybe a quarter mile up the road is where all these tracks are coming from. And finally he, forces it up on the shoulder to get out of the grass. So he basically, I honestly feel like he fell asleep, came off the road, took out a road sign. That's all you can. I'm guessing about the sleep, but I know he went off the road. You can see the tracks clearly. Not only that, I see a lot of mud on the wheels on the trailer, because the trailer locked up, and now he's dragging that trailer. He dragged the trailer out of the grass to get it on the shoulder. So you got a lot. I mean, and that's something that I noticed as well that I didn't mention when I first saw the truck. There was a pile of mud, I'd say about a quarter of a way up between both tandems on the trailer, both sides. From the tires being dragged, he just built a bunch of mud up and just got it up onto the shoulder. So, I'm looking at it and I'm like, well, I'm going to have to fix these valves and everything, because he ripped the valves off the tank, and that's what caused this to lose all the air pressure. So I pull the valve off, I go get it, and it's taking me some time, and I finally get the valve on, and I said, okay, we'll start it up. So he's starting it up, and I go back to the trailer, and I'm trying to pull this mud. This guy was such in a rush that he just starts dragging this trailer, right? And I'm back there like, whoa, he's dragging this trailer, trying to hurry up and get back on the road. And I was like, I was getting upset because, I'm back there. And now he's dragging the wheels, and the air is not, I'm going to have to get another hose that I didn't see on the trailer that got ripped off, because he hit the actual 45 interstate sign. So it was, the big signs, and those signs, of course, are metal, so it just ripped stuff. And I was tempted to get that sign, and have the 45 sign. It was a really nice sign. So I'm getting frustrated because this guy's he's just trying to get back on the road, and I understand he wants to make his money, but bro, you're putting myself in danger. And so I'm back there trying to dig all this mud out, when I finally tell him, hey man, stop, because you got a lot of mud back there from dragging these tandems back on the road. And then we have the dispatcher calling me. I have the dispatcher calling me, griping me out like, hey, what's taking so long? What's this and that and the other? And I'm like, listen, sir, your driver went off the road. And I sent him pictures and everything, because he didn't believe me. He was like, oh no. He says he's just lost air. What do you mean? He just said he just lost air. He didn't run off the road and all this. And I believe he didn't want to tell his dispatcher what happened. No one wants to tell you what happened, but I believe he did that because, it was dangerous. It was a fuel hauler. So if he would have wrecked out, imagine the damage and the contamination and just the cleanup that it would have cost that company. So, what I would like to mention about road service, if you're doing road service, it's great. It's good work, but just be careful, because by the time a truck is stopped operating on the road, if it's not like a simple fix, it definitely needs to be taken back to the shop, because some of these repairs are very risky to be doing on the side of the road. I know that tires would need to be done on the side of the road, maybe, but it's very dangerous, especially nowadays with these drivers not paying attention. So definitely be careful out there. But a shout out to you, man. I appreciate somebody's got to do it. And I'm proud of you. I'm proud that you're out there doing it. If you're out there getting these trucks back on the road and safely, that's kudos to you. I'm very proud of you guys that are out there doing that. We still do some road service, but not too much. A lot of stuff that we do is in our shop, especially when it comes with diagnosing and stuff like that. It's going to be in the shop. King of the North says, what services do you do roll calls? We do roll calls, but if it's something that's going to take more than a few hours, then, or something that's more complicated, then we're not going to do a clutch on the side of the road, or we're not going to do a wheel seal or burned up. I had guys have burned up spindles where there's no oil in the axle, or no more oil in there, and it burns that spindle up, and that wheel comes off, and we've had to chain those axles up. We'd jack that axle all the way up because the wheels aren't on it no more, and on a trailer we'd have to jack it all the way up and put chains on it to keep the spindle from dragging and get it to the shop. Any tips to look out for visual inspections for a Hendrickson walking beam style? What type of problem are you having, Noah? He's got a comment here. If there's any visual inspections for a beam, an axle beam, what type of problems are you having? Worn out tires or anything like that? There's not too much you can do, but you can measure the difference on each side to try to see if there's a bend or something like that, or if you have wear on your tires. Definitely get an alignment. But visual inspections, mostly what you can look for with suspension, you want to look for bleeding rust. This is something that I brought up before, is rust bleeding, which is is rust that's basically getting knocked loose from movement. There's really shouldn't be too much movement on suspension when it comes to the U-bolts holding the springs, the actual springs in place and all that. If you see a lot of rust bleeding, you could have some movement, mostly with high mileage trucks. So yeah, that type of inspection, if you see any kind of movement, any kind of rubbing on metal, any kind of wear that's irregular, most suspension should just be mostly just all tight and clean. You can have some rust, but if you see some rust bleeding and rust being knocked loose and metal being rubbed in different areas, that's definitely an indication of some movement, excessive movement that shouldn't be happening. I remember 07 and 07 and regen hit the trucking world, and the repairs became insane. Yeah, well, after treatment systems, there was a lot of repairs before after treatment systems. Now, what I see is a lot of after treatment system issues that are because of neglected maintenance or operating the truck in ways that it shouldn't be operated, which is excessive idling and stuff like that. Yes, there were a lot of problems with emission systems, the newer emission systems, the older style DPF and DOC systems. A lot of these systems could still give you problems if you don't keep up with maintenance, if you're idling a lot, if you're not driving in conditions that are what the truck is made for. I know that these trucks are very strong and they can do a lot of work, but we do have to keep up with emissions, unfortunately. But it's just something that we have to do for now. For probably going to be from now on, and especially now how much they're controlling and CARB is controlling, even though CARB is or California and CARB are kind of they're trying to get as regulated as possible. But like I mentioned in my other broadcast, they were planning to turn off or stop using that nuclear plant that they had in California, and they stopped doing that. And they also are delaying the registration for, if you're operating in California, you're supposed to register with CARB. And I don't know all the details on what you need to do to register with CARB, but now they're having you register that, and that's going to be part of compliance as well. So definitely you need to look out for that. Brian says, how much does it normally cost to convert a stationary fifth wheel to a sliding one? It's not going to be a cheap one, because you're going to have to replace the whole fifth wheel assembly. Now, and alone, you can buy a fifth wheel by itself, but since you're replacing, the comment from Brian is, how do you if you can convert a stationary fifth wheel to a sliding one? You can, but you're going to have to replace the whole assembly, and you may have to drill holes in the frame because the bracket may not line up. It's doable, but I couldn't give you an exact price. OTR Vic says, how much for replacing rods and mains on a... Well, you would have to... I don't have the price right off the top of my head. I need the serial number. I need to get the amount on the parts. It's quite a bit of work, dropping the pan, replacing the mains. That's going to be pretty much probably a whole day job, to be honest with you. And that's a hard job. Honestly, it'd probably be a day and a half, maybe 2 days, because... dropping the pan, replacing each rod, you have to do them one by one and torque it down. It could be a full maybe day and a half, cleaning everything up, putting it all back together. Day and maybe I would say about 2 days to be safe. I wouldn't tell you a day, because I definitely couldn't get that done in a day unless you're one of the guys that are working 20 hours, which, I mean, we used to work very long extended hours into the night. 6 days a week. Now we're down to 5 days a week, just because it can be pretty tiring. It can be pretty tiring. Yeah, but I couldn't give you an exact price. If you're interested in pricing, you can give us a call. Brando, one of our service writer, or Francisco, either one of those, you can call us at 972-225-3017. And you can give us some more information, and we'll be able to give you better idea. He's okay. We got another comment about the roll call tech. He has mainly light air leaks, airbags. Crazy ones drove 275 miles for a crank no start to find out the driver failed to fill the master kill switch on. Jumpstart also. Dealers are slow to respond. Dealers are like that. Dealers are tough, man. I mean, I understand they're dealing with a lot of repairs, and they're also dealing with issues with manufactured parts, not being able to get a part. So it's not easy to be in a dealer. Imagine doing all that work, traveling for that far. Oh, okay. So it was a dealer that sent you out for that job. Yeah, I see nowadays some of these guys are collecting up front, and then you have to, if you are in the service side, you definitely got to be careful with credit card sales, especially if you don't have the credit card on you, because they'll dispute it, and then the credit card company can give you a headache about that. So we don't do credit cards. Okay, we use those checks, the com checks. Yeah, those are third party checks. So you don't even accept credit cards. That's good. That's good. Yeah, because com checks are solid. Third party checks are not actually personal checks or company checks, but you're talking about the com checks and the T checks and all those. Definitely, those are very secure. When I'm done, I get PO for the type of check we carry, and it's instant payment. Yeah. We use like 5 different types of those checks. Yeah, they're T checks, EFS checks. Yeah, we use those as well. Definitely better than credit cards. Brian says, I got a small oil leak from the inspection plate on the flywheel housing on my Freightliner. The 2 bolts aren't catching any threads. They just spin. What type of engine is that on the flywheel housing? You got 2 bolts on the transmission that aren't catching, that bolt the transmission on, and if it's where the transmission meets the housing, if it's where the transmission meets the housing, then you would either have to replace that housing, or you can put helicoil in there. And if there's oil coming through there where that transmission meets that housing, it could be the rear main seal. My truck blows a lot of smoke when I'm on low RPM, sometimes black smoke, sometimes white. Are you burning a lot of oil? Are you burning a lot of fuel? How many miles? How frequently do you recommend adjusting brakes? I would adjust them. I would get them looked at least every PM. I had a driver drag in a fuel pump with the brakes on fire. Bad S-cams, need grease every once in a while. Yep, definitely grease those S-cams and keeping up with maintenance. That's why I really try to push maintenance, because this is what happens. If you skip out on maintenance, you have these problems. If you have to readjust often, the slack adjuster needs replacement. Yep, definitely. Yeah, slack adjusters do get the slack out of the adjustment, but if you have a bad slack adjuster, you can't always just depend on your slack adjuster to take that slack out. So it's definitely, I would at least check the brakes every PM. But yeah, if you adjust them too often, you can have some problems. I try to adjust my brakes once a month, tightening them all the way down and back them off half a turn, just to make sure everything is in compliance. Good job, Brian. Oh, trying to get to this next chat, but my chat box is all acting all goofy. All right. So the clicking, grinding sound when you back off the brake, that's actually doing damage to the adjustment. You should only adjust it. Some slack adjusters are different. They have either a key that you can put in there or a tool. But if you don't have that, then yeah, that popping noise is normal whenever you're backing them off. If you're doing them yourself, just do them once. I would do it every PM. And make sure to chalk your tires and be safe. I would like to share another story, but I'm trying to get through these chats. I have a 2017 Cascadia Evo. I used to drive 180 miles and wouldn't consume a quarter tank. Now it's consuming a quarter and a half, sometimes half a tank. I have noticed lost power and inclines also. I guess question would be, what do you think it might be and what I should try and check to find the problem? I have replaced injectors and seals, intake gaskets, and fuel filter housing gaskets. Have you done an overhead adjustment on it? And since I was talking about compression tests, you can do a compression test to see if your compression's good. But definitely, your truck could be running multiple regions, causing the low power and high fuel consumption. Injectors and intake only 1/3 of the problems. Well, Brad, yeah, there could be some other problems, but when it comes to, I wouldn't throw too many parts at it without doing all these tests and ensuring valve adjustments are done. Valve adjustments need to be done at 500,000. So if that's not done, that needs to be done. And checking your air filter, making sure your air filter is good. And this is what I brought up yesterday on the broadcast about MPGs. If you got decent MPGs and you got it good, and you start noticing excessive fuel consumption, definitely get it checked out. You can check for boost leaks as well. But he said he'd already got his intake manifold replaced. So I wouldn't think he'd have any boost leaks. But definitely, if you haven't done a boost leak, there's quite a bit of tests that could be done. But I would definitely do the test before replacing parts. The boost pressure test, the compression test, ensuring that your valves are adjusted. Those are items that can definitely cause excessive fuel consumption. Oh, we got a super chat. Sensors too. Yep, I did bring up sensors. I appreciate that super chat. My first super chat today. Hale Pike, I appreciate that. Yes, I did bring up sensors. Sensors are definitely an issue. It could be, if you're talking about Michael's problem, when I talked about checking your sensors earlier in the broadcast, this is what I mean. If you have a clogged intake sensor, now I'm not telling you just to replace these sensors. I would say inspect them. Okay, inspect your intake sensor, your boost pressure sensor. If they're not built up with soot, that issue could definitely cause some problems. Are you having multiple regions? This vehicle was purchased early this year. When it was purchased, it was not noted, but the vehicle has it's got a delete. That tells you all. Now the truck didn't give any problems all year until just recently. Michael, unfortunately, that's what happens with deletes. And if you look at some of my other broadcasts about deletes, I'm not making this stuff up about these engines having problems over time. It definitely cuts the longevity on these engines with these hack deletes, because there's just not quality deletes out there. By the time they build a good quality delete and the person's got a reputation of a good delete, they get shut down. So then you got somebody else hacking, and then nothing's all available proper work is not available out there. So I would definitely do the maintenance that you can. But if you still have problems with it, it could be the delete. Hale Pike, thanks for the super chat. He just mentioned that he doesn't fuck with deletes. Yep. And it's challenging, man. It's challenging. Because as a technician, okay, we're gonna recommend valve adjustments, the maintenance on it. That's why I'm trying to do we would recommend doing all these tests before swapping parts, because we're very cautious about those type of things. And if it is eliminated, unfortunately, we won't be able to mess with it, because not only could we get liability for it, who knows, CARB might try to come after shops that repair these eliminated trucks, but we've done it before. Well, we used to service deletes. We don't service them anymore, not because of CARB. Well, one reason is because of CARB, but another reason is because we've had issues where we've done repairs and the problem's still there, and it's challenging, very challenging. And then you have issues with, the elimination, and it's just too complicated. I mean, that's what Hell Pike just said. It's true. Deletes are super complicated. They are, because they're basically putting a old log file, a old tune to a newer model truck. And there's so many different models. It could be a DD15, and there's just within that 5 years that DD15 has been made, they've already changed their files, their tunes so many times. The fuel mapping, all the different sensors that are being reading, all the different programs, all the log files are all different. So if you have a hacker that has a file for a delete, he's not gonna check what model. I mean, it's a DD15. Yeah, I got it. Boom, there you go. Oh yeah, look at me. I don't have no more check engine. Or not only that, but yeah, you do have a check engine, because if you delete the system, you have a check engine light permanently. So, okay, yeah, well, I don't have to deal with it. Now I'm gonna ignore my check engine light because I know that it's because it's my delete, and I'm just gonna keep on going. And that's what happens. And I'm not trying to down if you've already bought them and you didn't know about it, but I'm sharing the information because it's just, it's what we see in the shop. We see it. We see people come in low power. We see this. We see bad heads happening, bent valves, scuff liners. All these type of problems start to happen. Hell Pike said he likes to stream. He's learning a lot. Hey, you know what? That makes me feel even better. I just got a boost of energy just from reading that comment, because I know that now I know that at least this live is getting out some good information. So I appreciate that comment. And this is why I'm doing the lives. Even if these lives are going to be on, they're going to be online for a really long time. So you can go back and look at them later. Definitely going for the long. Owen says, I'm a new technician starting a job at a dealership soon. Any advice? Congratulations. Take your time. Learn as much as possible. Don't be shy. If you want to get in there, if you got tech, what I don't like about dealership, what I would want to avoid is don't get this. I don't like the some of the morale of the technicians. Oh, I'm a technician. I'm a diesel technician. Now I'm this badass, and I'm at the dealer and I'm dragging my ass, and I'm gonna work at my own speed. Nah, man. Like, don't catch that from other people that's been there for a long time, and they they got that attitude. I don't know why some diesel technicians are like that. I know I know it's tough to, I'm not saying you have to be jolly. I'm not saying be jolly and, make everybody happy, but I'm just saying don't be a dickhead, man. But learn a lot, learn as much as you can. If you're looking at getting into tools, take your time. I know that they're probably not going to throw you on that quickly when it comes to like big stuff. But just take your time, learn what you can. We have, like our shop, we have an engine that we train on. So if we have newcomers come in, we'll train on a different engine. We make sure you're following procedures. Anything that you're doing, if you're at a dealer, they should have all the procedures. They should have all the literature that you need on anything that you work on. So definitely catch yourself up on the literature, follow the literature. Don't take shortcuts. Take your time. If not, you're going to have busted knuckles. Busted knuckles are going to happen. But if you take your time, it's probably going to be less. I had a comment the other day on one of my videos. They were like, oh, man, you're too clean. Y'all guys are too clean. You can know a new technician if they're dirty as hell, man. Like, if they got grease, like, if you do an oil change and they look like they took an oil bath, they are brand new. I know it is not that difficult not to get dirty, and you can get dirty, but I mean, cleaning it all, blowing it off with a gun, whatever. But if I've seen new technicians, they come out of an oil change and they're just drenched in oil. just got it all over the place. So just take your time, man. Put some gloves on. Take your time. Put yourself in the right position. If that dealer doesn't have lifts and you're having to get on the ground and work on the truck, take your time. Put yourself in a good position, a comfortable position where if you're on the ground, put yourself in a comfortable position, because if you're feeling and you're in an awkward position and you're uncomfortable, you're not going to be able to work comfortably. So try to be comfortable. Be comfortable in the position that you're working in. Set your area up appropriately. Just set it up nice. Get your tools. Make sure everything's accessible. Get you a cart. If you're on the ground, get you a tray so you can put your tools in and not kick them all around. Get you some bolt trays as well, so you can keep up with the bolts. Keep everything, the tips that I was giving you in mind about the batteries and strapping everything together. But welcome to the industry. Welcome to the industry. As a business owner, I have learned to don't waste time asking how something happened. You will just get a mouthful of lies. Oh, okay. So Jamie's saying, yeah, well, it happens. People lie, unfortunately. Hello, everyone. I'm from Russia. American trucks are the best. Oh, thanks for joining us. I didn't know that we were still being broadcast in Russia. I know we had a lot of Russian viewers when we first started the channel. Thanks for joining us. Hello from Russia. Got a viewer from Russia. That's cool. Owens, tools. Figure out what you need and buy smart. That's what Day Rider told you. He's a technician. Definitely, you're going to be investing in tools. Make sure to get the big wrenches, and definitely invest in quality tools with warranties. Randy says, hello. How you doing? Space says he's got a 389 Pete with the X15. After you drain the coolant, do you have to vacuum the coolant back inside? You don't have to do that. We use dispensers. I mean, we dispense the oil or the coolant back in there, or a pump, or whatever works for you. I've seen those vacuums used mostly for automobiles, but the trucks have a way bigger capacity. You're talking about 10 gallons. So that's a big vacuum that you're going to have to put on to be able to put 10 gallons back in a system. We never use vacuum style systems. If you want your comment highlighted, hit us up on Super Chat. Thanks again, Hale Pike, for your Super Chat. But Space, the vacuums, I've never used them. I know that the tool trucks sell them. And I remember I saw one and I was like, oh yeah, maybe that'll work out. But that's a lot of coolant, and I didn't know. I know that automobiles use them, but I've never used them. We invested in we have pumps or pneumatic pumps. So we'll have a clean one. So basically you can drop the coolant in there and then hook up the air and pump it back in if you're reusing the coolant. If you're not reusing the coolant, then we have dispensers for coolants. If you don't have that, then you're basically going to the quickest way, and we used to do it, 5-gallon bucket with a funnel and a ladder. It's doable. Don't fill that bucket up all the way, though. I would probably fill it up maybe half or no more than 3/4. I did have a valve adjustment when I had the injectors replaced. Okay, that was Michael's comment about the low pressure or the low. So, Michael, this is just another example about these eliminations and what we go through. We'll do all these different, maintenance on it, and you're still having the problem. You're chasing this problem down, and it could be the source of the problem. More than likely is the delete. Brian says, thank you for all the useful information. I really appreciate it. Thank you very much for your comment. Oh, what was that? Space. Okay, so top Shada says, no, you don't just fill the coolant and leave it in the cap off running. And well, no, he wasn't asking if you have to get the air out of the system. He was talking about a tool that they use to create a vacuum in the cooling system. Correct me if I'm wrong, Space. But there's a tool that you can use, and I see it in the for automobile. But there's a tool you can use to create a vacuum and vacuum the coolant back in the system, which we haven't done on. I honestly feel like it would cause damage because you would probably collapse hoses. I haven't used it before, but if it works and you guys are using it, let me know. Yep. Talk about I didn't have much choice but to delete. Ooh, my DEF pump went out and it was sitting for weeks because there was a nationwide shortage. Dang. Well, hopefully it works out for you, Brian. Day Rider says delete is a $75,000 fine for the first offense. Wow. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you guys saw that one article. Chat. Brian's like, disregard that. Yeah, they're not gonna hunt you down, but I saw this one article. So Cummins manufactured this engine and it was a big fine. I think it was in the billions. Man, I'm not even lying. I'm pretty sure y'all probably saw that article. It was a pretty big article. And man, Cummins gets fined this big fine, $1.6 billion. That's crazy. 1.6 David. I mean, they got it down to the T. 1.675 billion penalty alleged claim. Oh, for alleged claim Clean Air Act violation. Cummins reached an agreement with federal governments in California and Seattle claims regarding its emission certification and compliance process for certain engines primarily used for pickup trucks. So this wasn't for semi-trucks. According to the Department of Justice, Cummins agreed to pay. They agreed to pay because they could have got fined even more, but I guess they come to an agreement to pay $1.675 billion penalty to settle claims that it violated the Clean Air Act by installing emissions defeat devices on hundreds of thousands of engines. That's why their fine is so large. Cummins said it has cooperated fully with the relevant regulators, already addressing many of the issues involved, and looks forward to obtaining certainty as it concludes this lengthy matter. I wonder if they have to pay that all now or if there's payments. Goodness gracious. Billion? 1.675 billion? What is CARB going to do with all that money? Cummins also said that it conducted an extensive internal review and worked collaboratively with the regulators for more than 4 years, adding that it has seen no evidence that anyone acted in bad faith and does not admit to wrongdoing. Huh. What was it? Okay, it says DOJ said Cummins allegedly installed defeat devices on 630,000 model years 2013 to 2019 Ram 2500s and 35 pickup truck engines. The company also allegedly installed undisclosed auxiliary emission control devices on 330,000 models year 2019 to 2023 and 223 Ram 25s and 35 pickup trucks. Cummins noted that it has already recalled model year 2019 Ram 2500 and 3500 and has initiated a recall on the models 1300 and previously acquired a total of $59 million for the estimated cost for executing this. Wow. Cummins expected to record a charge of approximately $2 billion in the fourth quarter to resolve. Wow. How do they not know what they were doing? But I understand, like, CARB is very, very, like, to get carb certified, I know that they have to they select an engine, and you have to go to their testing facility and basically put the engine on a dyno, but just the engine, and then they test it. So that's crazy. That's a lot of money. That's way more than $75K for these fines. But I've seen articles where they're getting they did track down some of the people that were doing the deletes, especially the people that were out of state or out of the country. What about swapping a modern engine for a classic one like a Series 60 or a Cat C15? I mean, you can do that, but you're going to have compatibility issues, okay? So if you have a modern truck, the CPC is not going to be able to communicate with the ECM, the older ECM. So you're going to have you're going to have starting problems. You're going to have we've seen problems from swapping engines that's a different model. So, or like maybe a newer model, or not the same serial number, or a few digits off, and the CPC won't even start. The truck won't even start. So if you have somebody that can change out, even the inside so that your truck will be able to start and run correctly, then it's doable. But, kind of like they don't do gliders anymore, but they even stopped selling the chassis to the glider companies, because they used to sell just, blank chassis. They used to just sell chassis with no engines to these this company that used to do glider kits, but they stopped selling them trucks with no engines in them. OTR Vic says, I had a 2016 with all kinds of issues with the emission system. I was going to delete, but decided to sell it instead. If you had a lot of maintenance, a lot of these after treatment problems that I see that are extended could mostly be linked to maintenance. I had a TA oil change. Guy forgot to put the cap back on, and I lost oil. Drove it for like 100 miles. Shame on me for a bad pre-trip. Yeah, help. Accidents happen, and what we learn as we get older, and that's all you can do. It wasn't your fault. TA is not really that credible of a shop, man. There's a lot of people that just work at TA just to work, and TA has a lot of, I would say, slackers. How do you diagnose the ABS light on a trailer? Well, you can use software, or you have to figure out what type of ABS system's on your trailer, and then you can there's some information you can find online, keying off, keying on, and then it can give you blink codes. So first, find out what type of ABS system you have, what kind of maker is it, who makes it. Look it up, see what model it is, and you'll be able to find some kind of fault tracing or fault isolation or fault diagnosing in that literature for whatever brake system you have, air brake system you have, ABS system you have. And with that, you'll be able to pull up blink codes. ABS systems are pretty simple. It could just be your ABS. Check, if your sensors. I like using computers just because we can hook up a computer and we can jack the trailer up and spin the wheel, or look at the sensors through the system, see what the code is. Oh, okay, this axle, this number here. Okay, let me check that out. Oh, it's not reading. But if you don't want to invest in that type, then you can definitely look up some information to pull up the blink codes. Yeah, that's what Day Rider just says. Look up the flash codes. Flash codes, blink codes. But that's a proper term, flash code. Hellpike says he likes to hear my stories. Not only interesting, but we can learn from it. What I know is I'm not going to stop learning. I love learning. I'm interested in learning new things, reading articles. I like that. And I'm going to try to share a new story with every broadcast that I do so that you guys can kind of get a little bit more to know me. So you don't feel, I mean, a lot of people don't know me. They see me online, but they don't know I have a lot of history in this industry. And I've been around the block. I may be young, but I've been around the block. But I appreciate that. Cummins is W2 or VW.2. Appreciate that comment. Everybody, I appreciate everybody that's joined us tonight. Thank you for all the comments. Thank you for the super chat there, Hill Pike. Thank you for all the nice comments. Everybody that's joined us this evening. Be sure to hit us up online if you want to join us on. If you're not subscribed to our channel, be sure to subscribe to our channel. Make sure to hit the like button. Share this video if you know anybody that can use this information. Share this video. We're in Dallas, so if you're rolling through Dallas or if you're from the DFW area and you're looking for service, give us a call, 972-225-3017. You can schedule online at our website, tatexpressinc.com, on the contacts page. Hit us up. Thanks for everybody that's joined us this evening. I will see you again soon. Be safe out there. Good night.